Hello and welcome back to the User Management System series. In today's session, let's assign roles to users. As you can see in the previous video, we loaded all the users from the user table and we loaded all the roles from the role table. That is good. Before watching this video, I strongly recommend you to watch our previous video. Okay, today let's assign roles to users. Okay, that is good. As you know that for this project you want to use MVC architecture and data access object design pattern. Here we have user role. Let's create different classes like model, data access object and service. Let's right click on that and here let's first create model. Simple, for example, user role. Okay, the class is created. That is good. Let's check table on MySQL database. We have user role table and we have user role ID, and role ID. Let's design model based on these properties. Simple. Let's take different variables. For example, private. We have int, for example, user role ID. Then we have private and for example user id, user id. Then we have private and for example role id. Let's correct that also. Simple, we have user role id. Okay, thereafter let's define a simple constructor. Simple, for example public user role, and here you want to pass in for example user id. Then we have role id. Let's initialize that. Simple, for example this dot user id equals we have user id. Then we have role id equals role id. That is good. After that, let's generate getters and setters. Select that, right click on that, and we have insert code. Let's select getter and setter, select all, then generate. Okay, all the getters and setters are generated. That is good. Let's remove from here. Simple. And we want to define after the constructor. Okay, that is good. The model is completed. There is no problem. We have simple private variables. Here we have constructor. Then we have getters and setters. That is good. So thereafter, let's create data access object. Right click on that and we want to create normal Java class. For example, user role data access object. Then finish. And here in the first step, let's import the required packages. Simple. We have import java.sql.connection. Then we have import java.sql. For example, prepare statement. Import java.sql. We have result set. Then we have import java.sql exception. After that, as you can see here, we have connection package. Inside that, we have JDBC connection class. Let's open that. We have get database connection method. Using that method, we can establish the connection. Okay. Let's import that class also. Simple. We have import. We have connection package. Inside that, inside that we have JDBC connection class. Okay, everything is good. Thereafter, let's create a method to assign role to a user. Simple. Let's define method here. For example, public boolean assign role, and here you want to pass user role model. Simple. We have user role model. For example, user role. So let's define a simple insert statement. For example, string SQL equals we have insert into tbl user role, and we have user ID, and then we have role ID. let's add values and we want to use parameters. For example, we have two parameters, okay? Because as you can see in the table structure, we have three columns: user role ID, user ID, and role ID. Here, the first one, which is user role ID, is auto increment because here we don't specify that column. That is good. So thereafter, let's read database connection from JDBC connection class. We want to define try catch with resources. And here let's define the catch block. We want to catch SQL exception. Okay. And here let's read database connection from JDBC connection class. Simple connection. For example, link equals, we have JDBC connection class, then we have get database connection method. Thereafter, let's define prepare statement. Simple prepare statement. For example, ps equals, we have link and we have prepare statement method, and to that method we want to pass this SQL query. Okay. Thereafter, as you can see here, we have two parameters. Let's bind that. Simple. We have ps.set int of 1. We have already user role. We want to get this from user role model. As you can see here, we have getters and setters. We have get user role ID, and we have get user ID, and we have get role ID. That is good. Simple. Get user ID. Thereafter, ps.set int of 2. Let's use user role.get role ID. That is good. Okay, after that, everything is fine. Let's execute that query. Simple. For that, let's take variable. For example, int row equals, we have ps.execute update query. Okay, that is good. Thereafter, let's define a simple condition and return that value, because this method return boolean value. Simple. Return if row greater than 0. That means if the rule is assigned correctly, we want to return true value. If the rule is not assigned, let's return false value. Simple. Return false. And here, let's define a simple message. For example, we have SQL exception.print.trace. Thereafter, let's remove from here. We want to return that inside the catch block. Okay. Okay, as you can see, we defined a simple method to assign rule to user. That is good. Thereafter, let's define another method to check duplicate rule. Simple. Here we want to define that method. For example, public boolean. For example, is rule assign. That is good. And here, what we want to do, we want to add two parameters. For example, int user ID. Then we have int role ID. That is good because we want to check data that duplicate data based on the user ID and role ID. Okay. Let's define query also. Simple. For example, string SQL equals, and here we want to use select query. Simple. Select current all. Okay. From we have tbl user role where user ID equals parameter, and we have role ID equals parameter because we want to check duplicate data based on the user ID and role ID. Okay, so everything is good. Thereafter, let's copy that same statement from here, and here we want to paste that. Let's define the catch block, and here we want to catch SQL exception. Okay, here we don't have this value. Let's use that parameters. We have user ID and we have role ID. Okay, So thereafter, let's execute that query. Let's use try catch with resources, and here we want to use result set rs equals we have ps, and we have execute method. Sorry, we have execute query method because now the query is select. Whenever we want to execute select query, we have execute query method. For the insert, update, and delete, we have execute update method. That is good. Let's use that. So after that, let's process that result set simple if rs.next, and we want to process that. For that, what we want to do, let's take a variable, for example, int count equals, we have rs.get, for example, int of 1, okay? Because in this query, we have only one column. Instead of that, you can use the column name also, there is no problem. Let's add name, for example, as total, okay? Let's use that. Instead of that, we won't use that, there is no problem. Thereafter, let's return that, return count if greater than 0. Okay, thereafter, what we want to do, let's define a simple message also. For example, exception print stack trace. Thereafter, let's return false value here. Okay, friends, in the data access object, we define two methods. The first one, insert data into MySQL database. That is good. The second one, check duplicate rules in the database. There is no problem. After that, let's save the changes. And we want to create a new layer, which is service layer. Let's create a new class. And here we want to create class, for example, user role service. Okay, the class is created, there is no problem. Thereafter, here, what we want to, let's first inject data access object, okay? And here we want to define variable, for example, private final, we have user role, data access object, for example, user role data access object. Thereafter, let's use constructor injection, simple. Let's define constructor, for example, user role service, and here we want to pass user role data access object, okay? Let's initialize that this dot user role data access object equals, we have user role data access object. Okay, we injected data access object, that is good. Thereafter, let's define method, simple, for example, public boolean. As you can see in the data access object, we have assign rule. You can use the same name or different name in the service, there is no problem. And let's use same name. Let's copy that. And here, what we want to do, we want to add parameters. We have two parameters, for example, int user ID and int, for example, role ID. Here, in the first step, let's add validation, simple if we have simple role ID greater than or equals to 0. Let's throw an exception, for example, through new, we have illegal argument exception. Let's use that. And here we want to use that overloaded version because we want to pass parameter. For example, let's add please select a user, okay? Thereafter, let's define another condition, simple. Let's copy that. And here we want to use, let's use user ID here. And here we want to use role ID. Let's change that to role, okay? Thereafter, what we want to do, let's consume data access object service. We have assign role method. We want to consume that, and we have is role assigned method. We want to consume that also, simple. Here, first, let's consume is rule assign method. Simple. If we have user rule data access object, we want to call is rule assigned method. To that we want to pass user ID and role ID. Okay. If this is assigned, we want to throw a new exception. Let's copy that, because here we want to find duplicate rule first. After finding that we want to create or insert a new rule, there is no problem. Here let's add a message. For example, duplicate rule is not allowed for this user. Okay. So thereafter, as you can see, we have model. In the model, we have constructor that accepts user ID and role ID. Let's initialize that. Simple. User role, for example, user role equals new user role, and here you want to pass user ID and role ID. Okay. Thereafter, let's use return, and here we want to consume assign rule method, because we want to assign rule to a user. Simple. We have user rule data access object dot, we have assign rule method, and that accept user rule model, and here we have that. There is no problem. So everything is good. As you can see, in the service layer we consumed data access object. That is good. Thereafter, let's save the changes, and here we have user role controller. Let's open that. We have simple code. Here we injected users combo box, role combo box, and here we defined user service and role service. Let's open user rule tab. As you can see, here we have button, we have assign rule button. Let's inject that also. Simple. XML private, for example, button. Okay, we have that button. So thereafter we have user role service. Let's define variable. Simple private, for example, user role service, and you can use any name. There is no problem. After that, let's initialize that service also. Simple user role service equals new user role service, and to that we want to pass data access object, new user role data access object. So everything is fine. As you can see, here we injected button, and here we defined a simple variable, and here we initialized service. That is good. Thereafter, let's define handler method to insert a new rule on MySQL database. For example, private void, for example, assign rule handler. So to handle exception, let's define try catch block, and here we want to catch, for example, let's catch illegal argument exception. Let's use that, for example, exception. Thereafter, let's catch exception also, for example, exception. That is good. After that, as you can see, here we have two combo box, we have users and we have rules. We want to get values from that combo boxes. Simple. Let's define variable. For example, we have user, for example, selected user equals, we have cmb user dot get selected model dot get selected item. Okay. Thereafter we have rule. Let's add this here. Instead of that, let's use rule model, and here we have selected rule, and here we have cmb rule. Okay, there is no problem. After that, Let's call service method. As you can see in the service, we have assigned rule method and that accept user ID and rule ID. Okay, let's call that method. Simple. We have user rule service. Let's use that user rule service dot. We have assigned rule method and that accept user ID and rule ID. Okay, and here what we want to do, let's define condition because we want to pass value based on the condition. Simple. We have selected user, for example, not equals null, not equals null. Then we want to assign that parameter selected, user, let's copy that from here dot, what is the problem? Okay, what is the problem here? Why? Let's check that selected user. Let's copy that. There is no problem. Okay, let's check that if selected user not null. Okay, we want to assign the parameter. We have selected user dot get user ID. Okay, dot get user ID, else let's add -1. Okay, thereafter let's copy that for the rule. Simple. I'm so sorry. Let's add for the rule also, and here we want to use rule. If the rule is not null, we want to add the value. We want to use, instead of get user ID, get rule ID. Okay, we don't get anything. Let's check the rule model. In the rule model we have get rule ID. Let's copy that here. Okay, here we have selected user. Instead of that, let's use selected rule. Okay, as you can see, we called assign rule method based on the condition because we want to check null value. Thereafter, let's display success message. Simple. As you can see here, we have utilities package. Inside that we have suite alert fx class. We want to use that alert. Simple. We have suite alert fx, and here we have different methods. Let's use show success. Let's pass title, for example, information, and here we want to add, for example, rule is assigned to a user successfully, and you can use any message. Here is no problem. So after assigning the rule, let's clear user count box and role count box. Simple. cmp user dot get selected model dot, we have clear selection method. Let's use for the rule also. Simple. We have rules dot get selected model dot clear selection. So thereafter, let's define message inside the catch block. Simple. We have suite alert fx. We want to use show error message. For example, title error, and here let's get exception dot get message. Okay, let's copy that, and here we want to use, for example, error, and here we want to pass message, for example, some error has been occurred. Okay, that is good. Everything is fine. Thereafter, let's call that method. We have assign rule handler method. Let's call that. Here we have assign rule button. Let's register that. Simple. We have btn assign, and we have set on action method. Okay, and here you can use different ways. Let's use lambda expression. For example, event and we want to call that method. And here we have an error. Okay, the error is here. Let's fix that. Okay, everything is correct. Let's clean and build the project. It takes some time. There is no problem. Let's run the application to see the result. Okay, let's log in. For example, admin123. Let's open manage users. Here we have user roles. Let's assign role to the user. As you can see, we got a message. Please select a user. Let's select user, for example, this one. As you can see, we got another message. For example, please select a role that is good. Let's select role, for example, admin. As you can see, role is assigned to the user successfully. That is good. Let's check data on MySQL database. And here, let's get all the data from TBL user role. Let's execute that. As you can see, we have data on MySQL database, user role ID, and role ID. That is good. Thereafter, let's add the same role to that user. Let's assign. As you can see, we got a message, duplicate role is not allowed for this user. That is good. And you can add different role. There is no problem. For example, you want to add employee also. We got a message, role is assigned to a user successfully. Thereafter, let's select Smith. To that, we want to add admin. As you can see, role is assigned to a user successfully. That is good. Let's check data on MySQL database. Okay, now we have 3 records on MySQL database. The first one, second one, and third one. That is good. So today we assigned role to a user. In our next video session, we want to fetch all the roles from MySQL database and display them in this simple table format. We have ID and here we have username and role name. That is good. If you have any questions, you can write them in the comment. Please like, subscribe and share my videos. That is enough for today. Have a good day. See you in the next one.